day that even if you keep all, just that one that you break, you are guilty of all. So we should understand that it's not a small matter before God. These are instructions that He gives to us, and He knows that we can do it. Going on, it says, that's still the same quote. God meant what He said, and shall we, who are presenting to the people the claims of the divine law, break that law ourselves merely to please the appetite? It's really, you will not die. Seriously, you will not die. If it's that you are in a situation where you are not able to make, people give very extreme examples. Oh, what if I'm not able to prepare, I'm not able to this, I'm not able to that? To be honest, you're not going to die. You don't have to cook because you tried your best and you were not able to make those preparations. You will not die. Take whatever simple things that you can get. You don't have to break the Sabbath just to please your appetite. One day will not kill you. Going on, it says, I know that frequently the Lord has withheld His blessing because we have failed to honor Him by keeping the Sabbath according to His commandment. So, some things that are supposed to have been given to us as blessings from God, God withholds it from us. Why? Because we have chosen to break the Sabbath. Because we broke the Sabbath. There has sometimes been nearly as much cooking done on the Sabbath as on other days. I would prefer to eat bread and water only, rather than run any risk of breaking the Sabbath first commandment. Can we really say that we would rather eat bread and water than to run the risk of breaking the Sabbath? I know many of us will say, no, me I must eat, oh. How will I eat only bread and water? Is that one food? But if you really hold God in high regard and you take His commandments really seriously, you will not consider it a big deal. You will find it a small thing. Why should it be something as little as this that will cause me to now break the Sabbath? Let me just hold myself and stick with the things that are available. There are things that we can really, even if it's just fruits, because of our mindset, and we think that I've not eaten food, so I have to cook food. That's why I have to just break the Sabbath. It's not, it shouldn't be so. Going on, from Selected Messages, Volume 3, 263, Paragraph 1. As Mrs. E.G. White's daughter-in-law, I was a member of her household for a little more than a year, and was often in her home and traveled with her over a period of 20 years. I have been asked concerning the Sabbath meals in the White home. As full preparation as was possible was made on Friday, the preparation day for the Sabbath meals. On Sabbath, the food for both breakfast and dinner was served hot, it having been heated immediately preceding the meal. All unnecessary work was avoided on the Sabbath, but at no time did Mrs. White consider it a violation of proper Sabbath observance to provide for the ordinary comforts of life, such as the building of a fire for the heating of the house or the heating of the food for the meals. So because you are not to cook on the Sabbath does not mean you cannot warm your food. The key thing is the preparation. You've already made your preparation, so you can warm your food on the Sabbath. So let's not think that because you are not supposed to cook, you can't warm your food. You can warm your food. That's what we are seeing here. Going on now, the next part, acts of mercy and kindness. And just before I move on, we've seen things that look like it's quite difficult. But remember that God knows our hearts. He sees the sincerity of our hearts, and He knows that we really want to keep these things, and He can give us the grace to do this. Amen? He can give us the enablement to keep His laws. It's not something that is hard for Him to do. Acts of mercy and kindness. Mark chapter 3, verse 4. And He saith unto them, Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath days or to do evil, to save life or to kill? But they held their peace. Reading from pamphlet 66, page 42, paragraph 1. It says, physicians need to cultivate a spirit of self-denial and self-sacrifice. It may be necessary to devote even the hours of the Holy Sabbath to relief of suffering humanity. They are needed ever because they are saving lives, is it not? So now we are seeing here that sometimes they may need to relieve the suffering humanity because their help is actually needed. They won't say that because it's the Sabbath, I can't help you and allow the person to die. No. Like the Bible passage that we just read, it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath. But we are seeing here that it's not the same work of where you keep the money. What did he say there? The fee of such labor should be put into the Lord's treasury. So it's more like you're actually doing a charity service, is it not? You are not actually working to get paid. You are just taking it as this is a charity work I'm doing on this day. I am giving services to people, helping them, saving lives for free. I'm not taking the money from it. Give it to the lost treasures, like says, for the worthy poor who need medical skill and cannot afford it. Going on, it says, okay, this is from Medical Ministry, page 214, paragraph 4. Let no man, because he is a physician, feel at liberty to disregard this word of the Lord. He should plan his work so as to obey God's requirements. He should not travel on the Sabbath except when there is real suffering to be alleviated. When this is the case, it is not a desecration of the Sabbath for physician to travel upon that day. But ordinary cases should be deferred. So you won't say that because as medical people, I'm saving lives. You don't make any effort really to see how you can plan yourself in a way that you don't have to work. But and he also mentions that even you're going there, it should be emergencies, not, oh doctor, my stomach is paining me. It can be referred to the next day. It is not an emergency, you understand? These are serious situations where somebody's life is at risk. It cannot be kept till tomorrow. It has to be done today. But like she says, ordinary cases, you can always defer them. You don't have to go to work simply because of little cases that are really not a big deal. Now, going on, self-denial as one of the ways of keeping the Sabbath. The Sabbath of the Lord is a day of rest from labor, and the diet upon that day should be more simple and partaken of in less quantities than upon the 6 laboring days. Now she explains why. Because we do not have that exercise upon the Sabbath that we have upon the other days of the week. Many have erred in not practicing self-denial upon the Sabbath by partaking of full meals as on the 6 laboring days. Their minds are beclouded. They are stupid and often drowsy. Some suffer with headache. Such have no truly devotional feelings upon the Sabbath, and the blessing resting upon the Sabbath does not prove a blessing to them. So you see that sometimes you come to church, you're all drowsy, you're not even here. And sometimes if you trace it, we have loaded ourselves with so much food, knowing that you are coming before God and you actually want to hear from him. We are seeing here that food has a way of actually beclouding your mind when you eat so much of it. So the Sabbath day, you should be careful. Like she says, it should be a day you take lesser quantities than on other days, because other days you are going to classes, you are going here and there, and so you are using all that energy. But here you are just sitting down, you are really not doing anything. And so eating so much quantity of food on that day, you are just here and you feel so drowsy. You can't even hear, like he says, the Sabbath does not prove a blessing to you. You can't even say one thing you learned from the service because your mind is not even here. Your brain it has shut down, you understand, because of the food that you've eaten. So we should learn to practice self-denial on that day, knowing that I want to hear from God. I want my mind to be open to hear from God. And so I'm not going to shut my body down in a way that I can't even hear God speaking to me. Now, moving on. Buying and selling as one of the ways in keeping the Sabbath. Should we buy and sell? Nehemiah 13, verse 15 to 21. From 15 it says, okay, sorry, just start from the next one. From 15 it says, in those, it's not complete. Please, let's go to the Bible. It's not complete here. Nehemiah 13 from 15 to 21. Are we there? All right. 13 from 15 to 21. It reads, in those days, sowing they sowed victuals. There dwelt men of Tyre, also daring, which brought fish and all manner of ware, and sold on the Sabbath unto the children of Judah and in Jerusalem. So we see people coming here to sell things to the children of Judah. Going on, it says from 17, then I contended with the nobles of Judah and said unto them, what evil thing is this that you do, and profane the Sabbath day? Did not your fathers thus, and did not our God bring all this evil upon us and upon this city? Yet ye bring more wrath upon Israel by profaning the Sabbath. And it came to pass that when the gates of Jerusalem began to be dark before the Sabbath, I commanded that the gates should be shut, and charged that they should not be opened till after the Sabbath. And some of my servants set eye at the gates, that there should no burden be brought in on the Sabbath day. So the merchants and sellers of all kinds of ware lodged without, that's outside Jerusalem, once or twice. Then I testified against them and said unto them, why lodge ye about the wall? If ye do so again, I will lay hands on you. From that time forth came they no more on the Sabbath. So what are we seeing here? These people that were coming to sell things to the children of Judah, to the people of Judah, what did he describe it as? That they were profaning the Sabbath, is it not? Showing you that it was wrong for them to have been buying and selling on the Sabbath day. And like he says here, that when it was getting to the Sabbath, like he says, when the evening, that should be verse 19. When it began to be dark before the Sabbath, that's its sun was already setting. He told them to shut the gate so that those merchants will not be coming in. And even when they were just outside of the gate, a very bad motive of waiting for the Sabbath to be ended so that they can cheat people, like we're seeing here, falsify the balances, which we see people doing in the market and all those kind of things, where they alter the things and just cheat people. But the focus is the fact that they were waiting for the Sabbath to end before they could do what? Buy and sell. What does it mean? That means they knew that it was wrong to buy and sell on the Sabbath. Now we're in school environment. We see these things a lot. People just, if I don't even know which one to say is worse, whether it's even in the main churches at home. What were described in Nehemiah, we see it a lot. Those people that sell ice creams and all those things, they hang around the church because they know that there are so many people there. And you see people coming out once church has ended or even while it's going on. They come to buy these things, buy water, buy ice cream, buy various kinds of things on the Sabbath. Even for us here too. You see people, they just stop on the road, oh, I'm thirsty, and they just buy water and drink. Really? Should you really do that? If you had prepared for the Sabbath, will you need to buy those things? You wouldn't. So we are seeing here that buying and selling on the Sabbath is something that God considers as you profaning the Sabbath. Now let's move on. Traveling. If we desire, this is from Counsels for the Church 267, paragraph 7. If we desire the blessings promised to the obedient, we must observe the Sabbath more strictly. I fear that we often travel on this day when it might be avoided. In harmony with the light which the Lord has given in regard to the observance of the Sabbath, we should be more careful about traveling on the boats or cars on this day. In these matters, we should set a right example before our children and youth. In order to reach the churches that need our help and to give them the message that God desires them to hear, it may be necessary for us to travel on the Sabbath. But so far as possible, we should secure our tickets and make all necessary arrangements on some other day. When starting on a journey, we should make every possible effort to plan so as to avoid reaching our destination on the Sabbath. Now, this is something that I still know that many students also practice. When we are coming to church on Sabbath, from our lodge, we just bike straight to the fellowship. What's that? Is that not transporting on Sabbath? Is it not? And you know, the funny thing is that we really don't have. I stayed in lodge too. I did not stay in. I stayed in hostel at least the first part, from my degree to my year two. But the rest, I stayed in lodge, and it's not a big deal having to walk down. You know, sometimes one thing that really affects us is that we don't even want people to see us walking down to church. We feel it as beneath your dignity to be trekking to church. You feel more dignified entering bike and coming to church, whether or not you know that is wrong. But if you don't know that is wrong, we are seeing here today that you are breaking the Sabbath by doing that. That is the transaction that is going on that day. Is what it is. But we are seeing here that for those that may need to give, like preachers now, that need to reach a certain place to give the word of God to people, and they need to go on that day, that they are to make necessary arrangements on some other day before the Sabbath. They should make that arrangement of how they are going to go to that place, not on the Sabbath, you are making that transaction. The day before, you have made your arrangements for you to arrive at your destination to be able to preach the word. And another thing we are seeing here too is also, even in just traveling, not necessarily that you are going on that Saturday, but you know that you calculate your journey. You know that if I go today, maybe today is Friday, I'm going to a particular place, and you know that there's how this journey can go, that I'm going to end up reaching there on the Sabbath and I will have to transact. You understand? And so you plan yourself that if it requires me to travel on Thursday just to avoid, it really depends on how we prioritize the Sabbath. These things can be looked at as it's not really a big deal. You look at it, it's not my fault. It just happened. I just had to. I just had to. But if you're so conscious that you do not want to break the Sabbath, you would rather deny yourself and travel on Thursday, and I'm just using Friday now, so that you ensure that you don't arrive at your destination during the Sabbath. You understand? Because anything can happen. I remember when I went for a camp, that was last year, and the estimated hours was about, I think, was it 4 hours that we estimated that we'll get there or so? But we ended up getting there around, I think that should be like 9. Although that was not on a Friday. I think it was on a Thursday or Wednesday. But I'm just saying, like, this is something that if it was on a Friday, you may feel like this is enough time for me to get there. It was a distance, but we just assumed that we'll be able to get there in time. Things can happen, and because you don't want to run the risk of breaking the Sabbath, you make arrangements so that you ensure that you do not arrive your destination on the Sabbath, knowing that you will be in a tight corner and you just have to make that transaction on the Sabbath. Going on, it says from Counsels for the Church 268 paragraph 1. When compelled to travel on the Sabbath, that's like we stated in the case before of a preacher having to go to a particular place to give the word, and he has to be there on Saturday, and he makes his arrangements the day before. Even looking at this arrangement, God has a way of, I don't know how to describe this. It's not something that is not possible. Many people have been doing this, and they have made arrangements with people who are maybe bike drivers, keke drivers, whoever, and they arrange with them, and they're able to go on that day, take them there. But it's just our willingness. We don't really consider it as something that is wrong. So we don't even make any effort at all to ensure that we make our arrangements before the Sabbath. But if we really understand these things, and if we really have reverence for God, we will not count it a big deal or count it something too much that God is asking for us to do this. For us, even in school here, I don't even see any reason why. I mean, how don't we go to classes? We go from one lecture. I remember in my year 1, where our class was, I think, at Old Registrar. And sometimes we have to go down to that smart area. And we walk these distances. But because it's Saturday, your lecturer is not, you're not, no physical person is telling you, you must do this way. You feel like, I have the freedom to go out, move as I like. You must enter the bike. But on a normal day, when we go from class to class, we are able to walk these distances. But when it comes to the Sabbath, we look at it as something that is too, I can't do it. And one reason I know is this thing of this self-consciousness. I know how many times walking from Esiobodo, because I used to stay at Esiobodo, you see people that are playing ball and everybody's just looking at you like strange, like, who is this one? As in, you are going to church. As in, it's so strange to them, like, because you always have to pass their midst. They are playing ball and everybody's just looking at you strangely. And many people don't want that. They don't want eyes to be on them. They prefer to even walk back. You see them, they walk back from church because they are in crowd, so they are not alone. They are not self-conscious. But coming to church, because you are coming alone, you don't want that. You don't want, you don't want that peculiarity. You don't want to stand that. And so you just want to enter bike so that you avoid all those things. But coming back, you see people in huge crowds going together back to Esiobodo. But when they were coming to church, that's not how they came. They came with bike. So we should lose consciousness of ourselves. Are you rather going to please self than please God? Who really do you want to please? Are you really going to offend God just so you can please yourself? Think about these things. Going on, it says, when compelled to travel on the Sabbath, we should try to avoid the company of those who will draw our attention to worldly things. We should keep our mind stayed upon God and commune with Him. Whenever there's opportunity, we should speak to others in regard to the truth. We should always be ready to relieve suffering and to help those in need. In such cases, God desires that the knowledge and wisdom He has given us should be put to use. But we should not talk about matters of business or engage in any common worldly conversation. And at all times and in all places, God requires us to prove our loyalty to Him by honoring the Sabbath. So, when we are in this kind of situations, we should not feel like it's not my fault. I just have to be here, so I just have to engage in these discussions. Make sure that you are putting your mind stayed on God. It could involve reading a book, reading the Bible, whatever it is, often discussions like we are seeing here. If the opportunity presents itself, have these discussions with people, Bible discussions, because you want to ensure that you are not allowing these things to distract you. Because even normal traveling during any other day of the week, I don't know if it happens to you, but it happens to me. So many things around just distract me, and my mind can just go here, go there, and it can happen to you too. But because you want to ensure that I'm not seeing, it could even be just maybe a dress that is just hanging out, and you've started thinking about dress articles and this or that on the Sabbath. But because you want to make sure your mind is stayed upon God, you engage the mind with something to ensure that it doesn't derail. Going on, it says we should be more careful. This is from Special Testimonies to Ministers and Workers, number 342, page 42, paragraph 2. We should be more careful about traveling on the boats or in the cars on the Sabbath day. Even if it involves some difficulty, we should make every possible effort so as to arrange our matters about traveling, so that we do not arrive at our destination on the Sabbath. So it's still the same thing I was saying about making preparations to ensure that you don't arrive at your destination on the Sabbath. Now, the next one, which I know that God will help us. I went through it, and we can also go through it. Every one of us can go through it. It is not something that is going to be hard. It depends on how you look at it, really. Sabbath classes, Sabbath exams, all of it. Reading from Counsels for the Church, page 268, paragraph 2. Whoever obeys the fourth commandment will find that a separating line is drawn between him and the world. The Sabbath is a test, not a human requirement, but God's test. It is that which will distinguish us, which will distinguish between those who serve God and those who serve Him not. And upon this point will come the last great conflict of the controversy between truth and error. Remember, we were studying, for those that were here yesterday, specifically one aspect, let me not say specifically, about the Sabbath, and how it is what really makes us a peculiar people, what makes us different from the world. If we look at the Ten Commandments, we see that different religions practice many of the things there. Don't kill, don't commit adultery, don't take the name of God in vain, and all of that. But what is the one thing really that stands out, that really separates us from every other one of them? It's the Sabbath. It is. And just like we saw yesterday, that when you identify with the Sabbath, it shows the God that you serve. And it even talked about, okay, I think I will still get to that. So we understand that this is something that really, truly is the separating line. But when we are the kind of people that we don't like to be peculiar, we don't like to be the odd one out, we don't like to be separate, different, we'll find it hard really to follow God's commandments. Moving on, it says, some of our people have sent their children to school on the Sabbath. They were not compelled to do this, but the school authorities objected to receiving the children unless they should attend 6 days. In some of these schools, pupils are not only instructed in the usual branches of study, but are taught to do various kinds of work. And here, the children of professed Sabbath keepers have been sent upon the Sabbath. Some parents have tried to justify their course by quoting the words of Christ that it is lawful to do good on the Sabbath day. But the same reasoning will prove that men may labor on the Sabbath because they must earn bread for their children, and there is no limit, no boundary to show what should and what should not be done. So some people give the excuse that I don't even know how they arrive at that, because I know even my classmates have mentioned, as in when they knew I was not writing Sabbath exam, and they mentioned things like this, that God says it's lawful to do good on the Sabbath. What exactly is the good you are doing with respect to Sabbath classes and exam on Sabbath? And she says that if you want to give this as an excuse, then people too that have to take care of their children, work for their children, they can say, hey, me too, I need to do good. I need to work too on Sabbath so that I can feed my children. So where are you going to draw the line that, oh, this is the one that is not part? All of it, you can't give that excuse to God. You can't. Going on, it says, our brethren cannot expect the approval of God while they place their children where it is impossible for them to obey the fourth commandment. They should endeavor to make some arrangements with the authorities whereby the children shall be excused from attendance at school upon the seventh day. If this fails, then their duty is plain, to obey God's requirements at what? Whatever cost. So it's just what it is that our parents have put every one of us here. But then it's up to you to make the decision. They put you here, they may not have known that, or they may not even have known that it's even wrong. But now you know. It's up to you to decide. And what did he say here? That you should make effort to make arrangements with the authorities, that you'll be excused. But if he fails, the duty is plain. Obey God's requirements at whatever cost. Now, I remember in my own time, when I was to when I had okay, I didn't even know about writing Sabbath exams until my 300 level. I remember in my year one, I used to look at people that say they are not going for exam on Saturday as strange. Like, why? As in, I'm an Adventist too, so what's the problem? I even used to discuss with other non-Adventists too that used to tell me about my church member, and I'm like, me, I don't know why, I don't know for them. Me, I used to write, I don't know why they are just doing too much. But we are learning today. It may be you may have been in ignorance, but now light is coming to you. What are you going to do? Now, in my 300 level, when I knew about these things, I decided that I was not going to. From my 300 level, I was not going to. And I anticipated that if it comes, I'm really going to stand my ground. But I tell you, when it came in my 400 level, I remember I was reading with my classmates in one of them's lodge. And when we were so anxious to see the timetable, we want to know whether anyone is on Saturday. Even they were so scared for me. They really were hoping that there will be none on Saturday so that I would just scale through. And there were two on Saturday. Oh no. I cried. I told God, why? Me that has been saying I'm going to stand, I'm not going to. I remember I cried. I was so unhappy. I was telling God, why me? Why me? And my classmates, they were just pitying me, like, because they can see me crying, and it really gave them a wrong impression. But I thank God, He gave me another opportunity to show them a better countenance. And I remember that time they were really, because they saw me crying, they felt like, Chai, this girl is really suffering. She doesn't like what she's doing. She's just being forced to do this thing. Because if you have understood that this is what God expects of you, you will not really be crying, because you understand that it's God that has brought this test to me. So I know that at the time I was crying, it gave them a wrong impression that